So essentially, over the course of the year, because we've known the general election is coming, we've gone out to students and we've worked with NUS to create a student manifesto for what Royal Holloway students are looking for from our government and politicians at the general election. So as part of the campaign, we're reaching out to all the candidates. As you probably know, now we're split between the Windsor constituency and your Runnymede and Weybridge constituency that you're going for. So we're meeting with the candidates, going for each of them, and just asking them, around these questions that we went out to students and what students want to see. So if you're ready to go, we can start going through the different questions and discussing the points a bit more. Is that all right?
Yeah. Do you want me to introduce myself as well? I mean,
yeah, it might be good. Yeah, if you want to.
Well, I mean, I could be anybody, couldn't I? Really? So. Just because the video is on, so I'm Nicholson. I'm the Liberal Democrat candidate for Runnymede and Weybridge constituency, standing in this general election. There you go.
Amazing, thank you very much. Right, Nisha, do you want to take the first one?
Yeah, so we're going to start on the topic of housing and accommodation, if that's okay. So a lot of our students move into the Egham and Engelthal Green area after first year, and they quickly find that the housing market in this area can be expensive and low quality. If you're elected, how would you ensure better rights for students as tenants and ensure that the housing quality is better and that they're able to hold landlords to account?
So you're right, it's really, really difficult, isn't it? I mean, there is, there's been a cost of living crisis on. The unfortunate budget that we had back in 2022 has put hundreds of pounds on people's mortgages, but it's also put hundreds and hundreds of pounds on people's rents as well, as those landlords have fed the increase on their mortgage through to students, to tenants. It's not just students, it's tenants across the way. So yeah, I think with the inflation, I hate to sound like Rishi Sunak, with the inflation coming down, that is going to actually start to affect the mortgage payments and also those rental payments, but actually that's not in the immediate term. So you're going to see that coming through possibly within the next year, but actually it's going to take time. So what we're looking to do is and it's difficult really, because students are in that market where you have to have kind of private tenancies when you're in your second, your third and your fourth year. And so it does depend on the housing market as a whole. So what we're as a party looking to do, we're looking to build approximately kind of just under 400,000 homes. Of that, there's going to be around about 150,000 social homes. So that would help some of the, it was to help to alleviate some of the pressures that we're seeing on the housing market. But there isn't a quick fix in the next year or so. It takes time to get kind of planning permission on brownfield sites. We're looking obviously to build more on brownfield sites and identified sites where you can have housing rather than greenfield sites. So that takes a little bit of time to come through. It will improve over the course of the kind of next government, that kind of 5-year period. Once you have more housing being built, once you have more social housing, that starts to alleviate some of the pressures on the students. But in the immediate short term, it's really about kind of looking at kind of fair rents. It's looking at the leasehold agreements on some of those properties that students might be renting from landlords. So if a landlord has a leasehold agreement, they're paying usually quite a lot of money, so it's capping those leasehold agreements and keeping those costs down. But it's also around fair housing for students as well. So we know there's a lot of energy loss through some properties. So it's having insulation programs that we've put in our manifesto to actually insulate homes to make them more energy efficient. If they're more energy efficient, that helps the students' bills. It helps the kind of people who actually own the houses who are renting them. It helps their bills as well. So I think it's a number of measures really. I've probably said enough there. I don't know if that's answered your question, if you have another point on it.
Yeah, no, that's been really helpful. Glad to think that you're thinking about the energy bills and stuff as well, because that's slightly out the box thinking there.
It matters. It really, really matters, and it helps the environment as well, doesn't it? We've got to do so much to upscale the environmental issues, in the next government and going forwards, because it really does matter to our country and to the planet as a general thing.
Yeah. And you mentioned cost of living a bit, so I might just move on to that point. if that's okay. So obviously nationally there's been a rise in cost of living, and regarding students, this has impacted them greatly. A lot of them have had to pick up like part-time employment just to be able to afford to eat and pay rent and things like that. So how do you plan, if you're elected, to make education as accessible for all students, and what are your thoughts around lowering or eliminating student fees or increasing maintenance loans in line with inflation?
So within our education manifesto, we know that the Conservatives, I mean, obviously I'm a Liberal Democrat, so I'm going to say this, Conservatives have let down our kind of schools, they've let down our colleges as well, and our further education. I think although you're Holloway and obviously your population of students are very much looking at degrees, I think there's something around apprenticeships and recognising that not everybody goes to university, or that they might go to university later in life. They may not all be straight out of school or college, straight into university. So there's something around lifelong learning. So we have a lifelong learning guarantee. We're looking, I think, generally at increasing school and college funding per pupil, so that at the rate of inflation every year. College buildings crumbling, so it's investing in those new buildings and clearing the backlog of repairs. We're also looking at kind of tutoring guarantees. That's more for kind of school-age children, for disadvantaged pupils, and investing in kind of early years education. So those students who might be mature students coming through to Holloway University, that would impact them if they've already had a career. They've got families as well. So actually being able to invest or have access to high quality early years education, that closes the attainment gap for disadvantaged children, which then again helps kind of students coming through to university. In our manifesto, we're looking to reinstate maintenance grants for disadvantaged students immediately to make sure that the living costs are not a barrier to studying at university, because that's really an issue, I think. As I said, we're looking to create new kind of lifelong skills grants, giving all adults £5,000 to spend on education and training throughout their lives. And I know it's not, a kind of huge amount of money, £5,000. It would look to increase to £10,000 in the future when the public finances allow. And that would be, in what they're looking to kind of gain skills and education in, be it a particular course that they want to focus on, be it an apprenticeship, those type of things really. But what else was I going to say? I was going to say something else there and I've forgotten what I was going to say, but I think that'll do for the moment. But please come back to me and ask me another question if there's something else you want to know.
Yeah, no, I love to hear about the maintenance grants. That sounds very positive.
I empathise, actually. I've got a son who's at university in his second year at the moment, and the cost of living, it really has affected him. The price of his shopping, his food bill has gone up exponentially in the last couple of years since he's been at university. And he doesn't have the funds really to actually live on his own. It's really difficult. And I know there are some families out there whose parents have the means to actually support their children through university, but that isn't the case for everybody. And we want that level playing field, really, don't we? So that everybody, whatever their background, whatever their circumstances, has the same opportunity. And if you're kind of constantly having to work first, second jobs to actually pay your way through college, it impacts on your ability to learn as well, doesn't it? So yeah, I really understand.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I ask where your son is at university, out of curiosity?
He's at Bournemouth, so down on the seaside. Okay. Yeah, nice place to be, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's interesting because in Egham, sometimes it feels that, we have similar to London cost of living crisis for nowhere near the value of living in London and the entertainment there. So it's an interesting. I was really positive as well when you mentioned the impact that working like part-time jobs, or even sometimes people working 2 part-time jobs, because at the moment it feels sometimes it's dismissed as something you should do alongside university, whereas actually you're right, it does significantly impact their ability to get a quality education.
I think it's like cyclic. Well, there's a cycle there, isn't there? So you go to university, you've got your kind of funds for the year. The cost of living's gone up, so you can't necessarily afford your food. The cost of groceries in your basket and the cost of bills. So then you pick up a part-time job to actually make make your way through those cost of living crisis. But actually that impacts on the amount of time you have to study, which then again might impact on your kind of anxiety level to actually do that coursework, and handing in, you know, your assignments on time or at a standard that you would expect of yourself. You know, it just goes round and round and round, and we need to give our students the best experience possible in university to set you up for your future, really, because you are our future. And we need to really think about how we invest in you. So it's more than just kind of finances, it's the whole kind of holistic approach to what on earth we're doing with our students, really.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. That's very helpful. Moving on to my next topic, if that's okay.
Yep.
So this topic is about the LGBT plus community. So in recent years, our students have consistently raised that they feel like the United Kingdom is becoming increasingly hostile environment for queer students, with the current government ministers and shadow ministers and even the Prime Minister making comments and policies that are harmful to the LGBT community. So if you're elected in Windsor, how would you stand up for this community and secure better support for trans students at university and make like the whole of the EGM environment a safer like environment for LGBT members of that community, basically?
That's
Sorry.
no,
Rambled a bit there.
No, you haven't at all. It's a really important point, and it's a really topical point as well, isn't it? So, I mean, as Liberal Democrats, we exist, and I'm going to kind of quote our preamble, exist to build a free society where every person's rights and liberties are protected. Everyone should be able to have their lives as who they are, free to pursue their dreams, that fulfill their potential, safe in the knowledge that their fundamental rights will be protected. And, you know, in the past decades, the UK has led the world in advancing human rights, civil liberties, equality for women, LGBTQ plus, people, disabled people. You know, that came in 1999 under a different government, and it was, I think it was in the 2010s, it was actually a protected characteristic. But we've all seen under the Conservative government that progress has stalled. We're failing to stand up, as if they are failing to stand up as a government to the hatred and prejudice, and actually some of the language that has come out of Westminster has inflamed these issues as well. And they're not tackling the entrenched inequalities, really. Instead, they keep on threatening to rip up the kind of UK Human Rights Act and pull us out of the kind of European Convention of Human Rights, which would absolutely be a travesty and would make the UK a pariah state, essentially, on the international stage. So, I mean, Liberal Democrats as a whole, we kind of champion freedom, dignity, well-being of every individual, and we will and we do stand up and combat all forms of prejudice and discrimination wherever they exist. And there's a debate at the moment, isn't there? Particularly contentious debate, and it's been inflamed by some of the language used by politicians around the rights of women in single spaces and the rights of people who are transgender as well. And actually, I think from my perspective, I'm a nurse by background. We treat everybody as an individual. Everybody who's in front of you is an individual, and that's how you treat them. And I think it's about taking that debate back and saying, it's not about one group against another, pitting them against each other. It's about how we keep all people safe and protected. So if we're looking at those single spaces, we should be kind of looking at spaces that are safe for women, but we're also looking at spaces that are safe for transgender people, and in some cases for men as well. You know, violence against women and girls happens, but we know that violence against men happens as well, and we definitely want to see that. So hate crime has risen exponentially in the last couple of years, and we want to see that come back down again. I mean, that feeds into kind of policing arguments and everything. And that would be the type of values that I would be espousing. Those are the values that I espouse already. I have friends who are transgender. I have friends who are part of the LGBTQ plus community. I have friends who are kind of disabled, neurodiverse. I think it's a wide spectrum we're looking at there, and the UK has slipped in its approach to these groups, and actually we need to pick up that mantle and strengthen our protections, really, and our support. It's not just protections, it's support as well, kind of outward support and advocacy. There you go.
I'm very glad to hear you have that view. But yeah, I agree with you. I'll pass on to Alistair for.
It's good. I definitely agree with you as well. It's like protection and also support. I mean, I might hold off for it now because the later question is around support and mental health and everything. But
Yeah.
I know from the manifesto from the Liberal Democrats, there's already work around hubs and support there. So we might be able to talk about it in a minute later.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Well, yeah. So the next question I'll take over for the last three is around support. So mental health issues are highly prevalent among students, and mental health conditions reported by students are 7 times higher than they were 10 years ago. A 2022 survey by Student Minds highlighted that 57% of respondents self-reported a mental health issue, and 27% stated they had a diagnosed mental health condition. Additionally, nationally, on average, a third of universities are said to drop out because of mental health issues. So in light of these issues and this crisis, really, there's sort of 3 questions around: do you think enough is being done in mental health and wellbeing services and education? Do you think the government should be doing more to support or enable universities to better support their students' wellbeing? And finally, is there anything you can promise Royal Holloway students if you were to be elected to Runnymede and Weybridge?
So I think potentially that the Liberal Democrats have been advocating for a number of years that we have parity of esteem across kind of health services and mental health services. So absolutely, we have a manifesto pledge to improve kind of early access to mental health services by establishing kind of mental health hubs for young people in every community. So every community could be kind of schools, it could be colleges, and equally it can be kind of university college settings as well. But it's also around kind of introducing regular mental health checkups at key points in people's lives as well, when you're most vulnerable to mental ill health. And we know that we know from the research that when people are away from home, that first year of university, not always the first year, but quite often the first year, it can be a real trigger to actually kind of being vulnerable to mental health. So actually having those kind of mental health professionals in those environments to actually be available to talk to students, to counsel students, to signpost as well to what services are out there, is absolutely crucial. And again, drawing on my son's experience, they've certainly seen and used these type of services and would like to see them expanded. And I think there's something particularly relevant around the next few years. So you are the generation who have come through COVID, the pandemic. We had the kind of shutdown of schools, we had the shutdown of the social kind of access that we all kind of thrive from in communities. Now in a kind of situation where you're in universities, but having to pick up that learning again and that kind of relationship building that was essentially shut down for a couple of years has had a huge, I don't think we can underestimate the impact it's actually had on our young people across society. I know it's had an impact on everybody, but really at that kind of developmental stage, our young people across society is huge, and it's going to take time for that to kind of play through, which is why it's so essential that we have those mental health services in place and quickly in place. But it's also kind of, helping people kind of maintain good health. So like I said, I'm a nurse by background, and I work primarily in primary care, so general practice community. And we know that the health of the nation has been deteriorating. So the idea is that actually we, as a manifesto pledge, have more funding going into preventative care, so community services, primary care, that we keep people healthy. If you have access to green spaces and if you are generally healthier, that can actually impact your mental health as well positively. So it's kind of having all those things together. A mental health hub is absolutely excellent, and I think these are fantastic ideas, but alone it's not enough. We need to have the kind of, it comes back to that holistic approach again, doesn't it? That you've got those green spaces, you've got somebody looking after your physical health, that you've got the housing as well, comes back round to that one as well. You've got good housing that's insulated, you don't have financial worries, and you're able to live the best life that you want to be living, really, so that you can focus on the future that you want to have.
Yeah, that's really positive as well, and it's nice to hear party policy and manifestos that actually are offering something to young people, and especially young developmental from 16 to 25. So it's really positive words. Thank you. Nietzsche, anything to add?
Yeah, no, I agree. I really like the whole holistic approach, and like everything feeds into mental health. So like this whole cost of living crisis is also going to be affecting people's mental health because of the financial pressures and all of that. So if you solve that, then you're kind of helping. But yeah, it's all interrelated. But yeah.
It is all interrelated, isn't it? It's really, it's a circle, and if you have a bit of the circle that's broken, it affects everything else as you're going round, doesn't it? The housing, the employment, the work, the mental health, the family relationships, everything's impacted. So I mean, this is a personal perspective, but I do think we need to see society as a much more circular kind of thing. If one bit is broken, other bits, get impacted as well. Rather than just seeing things in isolation. This is a problem over here with housing, this is a problem over here with health, and they're all interconnected, and the sooner we actually recognise that interconnectedness, the better, really, because it impacts on the economy as well. If you've got poor mental health, or if you've got poor physical health, it's likely to impact on your ability to earn a wage, be it part-time when you're supporting yourself through college, or later in life. So you're not actually paying into the economy, which means fewer taxes for the government, or whichever government of the day. And, it's that whole kind of cycle, isn't it? And if we don't get it right, it impacts everywhere, literally.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. Next one, fifth one here. So it's around, taking a bit less of the national picture and looking at the local and the area, and it's around the local community. So students are an integral part of the socio-economic growth of Egham and the Englefield area, and with much of the economic surplus coming from contributions from students throughout the year. But despite this, students still struggle within the local community, and students would like to see a commitment to their safety through the implementations of night buses in Egham and Englefield, an investment into street lighting, which we consistently see raised not only just in this campaign, but over the last 10 years or decade. When it comes to council tax as well, are you able to support the campaign to remove council tax for students when remaining in contracts for a short time past their study date? And also something we've seen recently from NUS about extending the council tax exemption to students who are also studying part-time, because at the moment they still have to pay council tax.
I think there's something around the whole council tax being re-looked at the moment. Certainly it's in the Liberal Democrat manifesto. I don't think we've actually got anything specific about students, but I'd have to go back and look about that. But the whole council tax banding is out of sync. We know there's been that recent example in the paper that Buckingham Palace pays less than some, kind of ordinary house within Surrey. So clearly there's something to be looked at there. I know because I'm a councillor as well, I know that in my own council, obviously there's the care leavers, taking care leavers out of that kind of council banding for a number of years as well, so that actually they are allowed to focus on their kind of student experience, focus on getting their feet on kind of, the first rungs of a job as well. So there's something around looking at how we might expand that type of thing as well. I think with the night buses, so I'm not generally that, I don't know how kind of the Holloway actually works, but I would hope if I was elected that actually I'd be working with the kind of the Royal Holloway, but also Surrey County Council and the London boroughs that are surrounding Holloway to see what could be done around those kind of night buses. I think you're right, it's around the kind of safety aspect as well, isn't it? And it feeds back into the environmental aspect as well. We want people to be safe. We want to have a kind of better environment, don't we? We could have a kind of electric bus service that actually is a night bus service, but also kind of having street angel groups, those community street angel groups, keeping people safe as well on the streets as well, looking out for our students. Yeah, probably a bit of a waffle around that one.
Oh, no, it's good. I'm always up for a waffle. Around, as we're talking about the local community and then councils and everything, is there anything, you said you currently sit on a council?
I do, yeah. So where I live, I'm halfway down the constituency. I sit on the edge of Woking, Elmbridge and Runnymede. If I picked my house up, I could move it into all three boroughs, but I'm on the Woking side, so I'm a Woking Borough councillor, so slightly further down the patch.
Is there anything that your time being on the council is, is there anything you've learned or affected, or would, make you, I don't know the correct phrasing, the best candidate for the job? Anything that you've learned from that council experience?
So from being, I don't know if you've read anything about Woking Borough Council. Woking Borough Council is bankrupt.
Right.
So I don't know if you've seen that in the news. So I was elected first in 2021. At the time, there was a Conservative administration, and I was elected to, along with colleagues as well, obviously, to look at the finances, as there were a lot of concerns around the finances. And we took control of the council in 2022. I think it for me, the experience I've had in these last 2 years has blown the Conservatives' flame for kind of economic credibility. It's been everywhere you look, you see poor governance, poor competence, a lack of kind of invoices, a lack of contracts, a lack of details, conversations that haven't been recorded, minutes that aren't there, companies that are just so complex that you struggle to see where the money has gone, building projects that haven't been properly project managed. So whilst it's a negative, it's actually a positive in a way, because I bring a huge amount of experience in scrutinising things that have gone wrong, actually. And we're going into a general election in an economic climate within the UK where there doesn't seem to be that much money around. So bringing that experience with me to look and see where we can change things from the Woking perspective, knowing the kind of financial situation there and where things have gone wrong, not just in Woking, because it's been a system-wide approach all the way down to the Woking level. How things were allowed to get to that state. So there's certainly things that I think should happen in central government and pieces of legislation that need to be put in place to actually affect local government finances. And also we know that kind of local government across the patch has received less funding from central government over the years and yet been asked to do more as well. So I think there's something there around looking at the responsibilities local government has, but also the funding they're receiving from central government. I mean, yeah, in our manifesto, I know I'm going off piste here a bit. What we're actually looking to do is to have a federal kind of UK model with increased funding for the kind of the regions as well. And I think that might work better than what we're seeing at the moment. So devolved government. I haven't talked about proportional representation either, have I?
You're more than what I'm literally in the office today, had a bit of a ramble in favour of PR, but neutral anyway. That's really positive as well, and to see you engage with that local level governance as well. It's really positive to hear, and I think it's a real strength. And then finally, last question from me before we sort of round up for the day is around the access to education. So students care about appropriate and accessible ways to university, and as a university degree can be key in unlocking potential, further income or opportunities in life. It's an important way to break down barriers. It's important to figure out ways to break down barriers to attaining a university degree. So are you able to talk about or pledge any support around introducing more alternative pathways to university and making attaining a university degree as accessible as possible?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm 100% in favour of kind of different pathways to help students to get into university. As I said, I'm a nurse by background. Within the nursing profession, we have some people who come into university at 18 and study automatically for a good degree, but a lot of our kind of graduates come in having already done a different job. So there are kind of degree straight pathways, but there's apprenticeship models. There's models that people pick up as part-time models. There's kind of, looking at kind of introducing the distance learning models. So you've got the Open University model. I think it's whatever works for the student, because we know that everybody's different. Everybody comes to education from a different perspective, from a different background, and it's making it as open and accessible to everybody. It's almost like a kind of step on, step off model, isn't it? And again, that's part of the kind of the thing I was talking about earlier with creating that new lifelong skills grant, giving adults that opportunity to spend that money on education throughout their lives so that they can choose what skills they need at that point in their life, and just making it accessible. Everybody should have that opportunity. It's just finding ways to actually ensure that everybody does have that opportunity. You know, and I think there's something as well around building that aspiration in earlier. So I'm part of a group, it's a volunteer group called Inspiring the Future. I mean, it's run by the Education and Employers charity. And basically you have people from various different careers, backgrounds, who go into kind of secondary schools, sometimes primary schools, but more so secondary schools, and talk to the students who are generally, they tend to be kind of the years 9 to 11, sometimes sixth form, about various different careers and options and how they can actually access those particular careers, but also broadening their range of potential careers that they actually think about. So have they thought about university education? You know, having a professional come into your kind of environment, your educational environment, and talk about something might well spark that interest to get involved in that career, or it might spark an interest that goes somewhere else to get involved in a particular career and look at the pathway to get there. So I think it's not just looking at that kind of university bit. It's looking at what happens before people get to university as well. How do we encourage as many people as possible to have that kind of rich, rewarding experience that they need for their life? And I think there's something also for me, I think it's remembering as well that actually, you know, you might go to university and you might do a degree in, say, history. And actually you come out of university and realise that actually you don't want to specialise in history. There are always different pathways, and that degree is in some ways a stepping stone to the next pathway that you might want to access, or the next career choice that you might want to access. I use the word history because my son's just done he did a degree a couple of years ago in history and philosophy, and actually he realised that although they're interesting to him, it was actually psychology he wanted to do. So he's worked for a year and now going off to do a master's in psychology so that he can start looking at kind of a career in clinical psychology. So I think it's recognising that sometimes you go to university and you're not 100% sure what profession or what job you want at the end of it. And sometimes it's working out which pathway you want to go on after that. And, you know, that's for government and employers to actually facilitate that. And, you know, I think that's really, really important for our future as well. Yeah, I have rambled a little bit there.
No, it's the best type of rambling. And it kind of sounds like you're sort of presenting like a rebuttal for this whole, you know, Mickey Mouse degree sort of discussion at the moment that's happening with Rishi Sunak. Is that sort of correct?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think that when they talk about Mickey Mouse degrees, they often tend to refer to arts degrees as well, don't they? And yet forget that the arts industry, and it's not just the arts industry, but the arts industry within the UK is, you know, it's a revenue grabber, isn't it? We've got such creative arts industry. We've got kind of diverse dance, we've got diverse theatre, we've got musicians, we've got so much to offer, you know, acting as well, media, there's television production studios, and there's so much within that realm. And some of those people will have gone to university and got what they call, or what the government currently is calling, a Mickey Mouse degree. It's not all about kind of, you know, teaching degrees, professional degrees, science degrees, and they're part of it. But actually it's about that kind of whole experience. I can't imagine what life would be like if we didn't have music, or we didn't have the arts, or we didn't, it would just be kind of, it would be a shadow of what we have. There wouldn't be that broad, rich diversity and culture, that we need across society. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. To sort of summarize and sort of bring it to a close, because I'm sure you're very busy and I don't want to use any more time than I need to. But as a summary, I mean, we've got lots of students at Holloway, you know, they'll be living in Edram. Even though unfortunately the election was called during term time, we still have a lot of outside of term time. We still have a lot of students who are still living in Edram at the moment. And you know, people will be registered to vote and voting all over the country. So sort of it's like a closing summary of why, for those students from Royal Holloway currently living in Edram, why should they sort of vote for you on the 4th of July, or any students who have travelled home and they're across the country, you know, on the wider aspect, why should they vote for the Liberal Democrats for students and their life in general?
So I absolutely think that every vote for a Liberal Democrat is a vote for a strong local champion. So I'm someone who's lived in Surrey for a number of years, who understands the kind of issues in Surrey and some of the issues that Holloway students are facing. And it's a real kind of, you're voting for a champion, a local champion for your community, who's prepared to kind of get in there and fight for kind of various issues, be it the students' issues, be it kind of childcare, be it kind of jobs. But we're looking for a fair deal for everybody in the future as well. So it's not just that student experience, it's a fair deal for you as you're kind of moving on from university, that you have the opportunity to afford a decent home somewhere safe and clean in the future, and a comfortable retirement, long be it, you know, kind of down the road, when that time comes, that you have the opportunity for a fair deal, that should you kind of, you know, have a partner and decide to have a family, that they can go to a school and have real opportunities to fulfill their potential in the future. And it's basically a fair deal around our healthcare as well. So we talked a little bit about mental health, but also that physical health, that you have it at the time that you need it, when you need it, and where you need it as well. And that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to have that fair deal for society that has slid away under the Conservative government. And that's what I'm standing for. That's kind of my manifesto pledge, really. It's for everybody.
Amazing, thank you. Nisha, do you have anything to add before we close?
It's amazing. Thank you for your time.
Is there anything you want to ask us, or anything else you want to get across before we sort of come to a close?
No, I think that's probably as far as we can go, really, isn't it? I think but I really appreciate you taking the time to meet with me. It's been really interesting, and I love your questions as well. Yeah, I hope that's kind of answered your questions satisfactorily. I think I can only come back to it again. I think, you know, you really are the future, and it's incumbent on my generation, because obviously I'm a bit older than you, to provide as many opportunities for the future, because it's my future as well as your future going forwards. Yeah, I think, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. So yeah, I've taken notes throughout the interview and recording as well. So we'll look to use any of these notes or we've talked about around our blog, so we can get information about what candidates stand for to our students at Royal Holloway. And as I say, we might take any footage and use it in any social media, or that this is what the candidates are saying. But it depends, you know, how it overall looks and how much time we have, because it's only 14 days now, 2 weeks until polling starts. So
yeah, it's great, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm sure you're very busy at the moment, so thank you for taking the time as well.
It's just a little bit busy, you know. I'm running through shoes quite quickly at the moment, so yeah, it's good. It's all part of that democratic process, and I hope you're both registered to vote, because the registration date has closed. Make sure you exercise that vote. People have fought for that vote, so yeah, exercise it.
Yeah, of course we are.
We definitely will be anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I think that's everything. So thank you so much for your time. Best of luck in the next 2 weeks.
Thank you. And to you for your futures as well.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.